Just to give you an overview of what we're going to do in the next, hopefully achieve it less than an hour, is we want to get your input on questions that you want answered in the webinar on the Snake River Dam and the webinar on spill. And then we want you to look at the options and the recommendation on the other dams and prioritizing and potentially dam removal that can benefit Chinook. And there's some options in your discussion guide. And then also that the recommendation about expediting the beach process. We did get through all of this in the last breakout group, and they have some good ideas that I think you can build on. But we want to start with the questions on the Snake River Dam. And again, this is just questions. It's really tempting to start debating the questions, but we're just trying to get a list of questions so we design that for you. Public, you probably already heard this, but the same ground rules apply in here. You can listen to the task force members, but we save your comments for the public comment section. We won't be calling on people, the public to talk during these breakout groups. So, Steve, do you want to just run through really quickly?
Thank you, Susan. So the steering committee had asked that members of the task force who are on the steering committee and others, as well as staff, develop a list of questions that would help inform the task force better understand the subtleties and nuances as it pertains to breaching the 4 lower Snake River dams. So those few questions kind of got built in by more additions, and they have found themselves to be these particular 8 questions that are summarized on the page right there, and I will read the full question. So I will read question number 1. The last group's addition to question number 1 is they said we should also ask, wherever you see number 1 up here, number 1 and just number 1.
It says since we can't read it.
But you can't read. So I will paraphrase what we see up there. So that'll kind of be the process. I'll review the question. I will tell you what the last group wanted added to it, and then we'll have a task force discussion about what additions need to be added. The first one is if the lower Snake River dams are breached, so those 4 particular ones, what are the projected benefits to wild Chinook abundance? And how long would it take for those benefits to wild Chinook to occur once the dams were removed? So that's this response immediacy issue. That's simply how many are there going to be and how long will it take to get there? The last group talked about, we've heard things like smolt to adult return, smolt to smolt survival, we've heard about concrete to concrete survival, reach survival, but really, how many more adult Chinook are we talking about by implementing this action? Which is what number 1. That was reiterated the question in the last 4th group. So again, the key question is how long will it take and how many are you going to get? Adult Chinook in this case.
Well, I'm curious about whether there are dams above the 4 Snake River dams, and does removal of the 4 dams change that equation? I mean, there are a bunch more dams above.
Let's add that question. Good question.
Well, I'm curious if the lower salmon recovery plan outlines the dam removal in the recovery plan.
It does not identify dam removal as necessary for recovery of wild fish in the Snake River region. The recovery plan was developed locally and approved by the governor and by NOAA. That's the local region.
It was approved by NOAA and tribes and the state.
The tribes are members of the Snake River Salmon Recovery Board, one of the 5 counties in southeast Washington that developed the Southeast Washington Salmon Recovery Plan that was adopted by NOAA in 2011.
So let's try to answer
We'll
the question.
make sure to put that in the webinar so everybody hears the answer.
Other questions? Do you want to go to number 2? We're going to try and move through these because we want to get to the other things. So,
So now we go.
So there's the abbreviated version of question number 2. The full question then is, would increases in wild Chinook abundance due to dam breaching result in an overall increase in Chinook abundance to southern resident killer whale relative to the recent average of hatchery and wild combined if, and it's a big assumption, if hatchery production were stopped or phased out because the dam was breached?
And the other group here talked about, what would there be a net loss in fish for orcas if there were impacts to hatcheries, and then what is the baseline that we're using for how many Chinook?
Correct. The notion here was what is the current status and trend of Chinook in the Snake River relative to the recent status and trend of the southern resident killer whale. That's kind of the context. Andy?
So output production on the, on the hatcheries?
Well, so there's the lower snake river compensation plan that's funded by ratepayer dollars to compensate or mitigate the impacts of the four lower snake dams. And I've been told it's about 15 million Chinook, and I've been told the budget's about 30, but we need an answer from an authority on that, not Steve's understanding.
Well, that was along the line of my question was, what is the current mitigation that's in place for the four lower river snake river dams in terms of hatchery production? What is the funding and what's the security, what is the security or stability of that funding?
So what are the mitigation, current mitigation required efforts?
Yeah. What's the current mitigation in lieu of putting those four dams in terms of hatchery production? What happens to that hatchery production? Because there won't be a need for, potentially a need for mitigation if the dams are removed. So it ties back to the way both of the previous questions. Just want to understand what the mitigation package is, what the funding source of that is, and what's the potential for losing those mitigation dollars in that hatchery production.
Those are all pretty wrapped up in one, but we will find the authority on a webinar to answer that question.
Next question. Who has authority and the sort of carryover, what is the role of EPA? And they expanded that sort of wanting a sort of a primer on all of the federal agencies' involvement and authority.
Right, so the key question was who has authority to decommission the dams, because we've been told certain things. We've been told, then the follow-up is who has the authority to actually then breach the dams, because decommissioning, you shut the dam off and you don't operate it, but it's still sitting there. Breaching is the objective here, then who has that authority? And then it was tied into what is the role of all the federal agencies, not only BPA, but we talked about EPA and a range of others that I've got notes on over here in terms of what are the federal authorities and what is the federal roles of those agencies as it relates to the lower forest snake dams.
And the previous group was wanting to make sure we included a timeline for decommissioning or breaching, and especially consider, the legal proceedings that are going on. So maybe some short-term things and long-term things, and how fast can things happen.
It might also be, as part of this, is what role might the state of Washington, the governor and the legislature play in that decision?
That's right, that's a good hat.
Yeah. So that is on.
That's a build on that.
To build
Oh,
on.
yeah, we brought that last, we've asked something similar to that. What is the state's role in that authority?
So clarify the state authority on dams, that up there at the top. Yeah, that one ties right in. Bill?
Just a friendly amendment, what is the role of the states, both Idaho and Washington?
Yeah, thank you.
And even Oregon, perhaps.
And the unique, that's a good question. The unique distinction is the four lower snake river dams are entirely different. So that's a fair question to ask.
So the next one again was the role of BPA, and they added it to look at wanting to know sort of the role and of all of the federal agencies that would be involved in this decision. Given that was good. All right, then the next one is what are the impacts to transportation and irrigation? This is barging and they wanted to know about the carbon impacts of if the dams were removed, and were there any others?
So they wanted to know what was it going to cost to replace existing irrigation and transportation? Who has the authority to fund those improvements? How long will it take? And will they be in place before a breaching scenario so that those are in advance prior?
I think I would add to that the recreational users of the reservoir. Put that on as a impact.
Right. Number 6 was what are the impacts to energy production and carbon emissions, and that's what overlays with the other things that came up. Were there any comments?
Is that number 6? No. Nope.
7 was what are the implications of court ruling?
So the question here is, as you all know, there has been national environmental policy review of the entire federal Columbia power system, all 14 dams. And the question is, why have those not concluded in the definitive decision to breach? And and then the follow-up on that is, how long will the current NEPA EIS process take? If those are very definitive answers, we know those answers. We've been told what they are. But those questions have come up because there seems to be some uncertainty about those. How long is it going to take, and when we know what alternative is?
Number 8 is then, what is the current NEPA process and timeline? And this type, we're going to talk about some specific recommendations about that in a few minutes, but did they have other things?
They just wanted that to be very focused on orcas, so what happens to the NEPA, the existing NEPA processes if and when orcas are added as a species to consider.
So any other questions that you would like answered in that webinar? And then we're going to talk about the spill webinar separately. That's next. Bill?
This may be in one of these that I'm sorry, but I'd like to know what the cost of breaching is and what the potential funding sources are.
Cost and, yeah, that did.
The cost of the actual work to breach
Yeah.
and potential funding.
Cost and.
Yeah, I guess I go back quite a ways and say, how did we get to these 4 dams on the Snake River, the dams we're talking about? If we breached the dams on the Skagit River, we'd have a complete river system dam-free. And how did we focus in on the Snake River? Why aren't we talking about
Why
restoring
the
the
state
Skagit?
as compared to other river systems in the state? Is that sort of your question? Okay. Did you get that?
Got it.
Other questions? Okay, well then let's talk about spill, which is related but different. And again, we're thinking about, we're going to have a webinar on this. This is just a list of questions. There is information on this in the discussion guide, page 6. So Steve, you want to?
So recommendations that have come out of the work group that have been not that clear are related to total dissolved gas caps, TDG, and spill. There's a relationship. The more the water is spilled, the higher the gas goes. And there's at some point the gas standard, the level of gas is going to impactful to salmon survival. So to get juvenile salmon quickly to the ocean, spill is a good thing until you start exceeding a gas. Currently, the gas cap is set at 115% in the tail race of these federal river power system dams, and Oregon has a higher standard. I think it's 125%. And so the work group has asked the task force to consider asking ecology to adjust those gas caps up to allow more spill to get fish more quickly to the ocean. Flip side is we've heard that as you approach that 125%, you start to see burns and lesions and impacts on juvenile fish and perhaps less survival. We know that there's an increased cost, revenue lost as we spill more water, it doesn't look determined. But the question here really is about increasing the gas caps to allow more spill. And it's nuanced a couple different ways in here in terms of the recommendations that I still kind of need to clean up. But just the overall question, yeah, Andy, go ahead.
Well, can I just one more, just so that you can build on what the other group, and basically they wanted to know just information about the benefits and the impacts, like how do you make this decision on those 2 factors, increasing the gas and spill.
So you got a graph that has 3 points to it, because you have increase as gas increases, increased risk of death for fish. As spill increases, you have possible increase in life as they go out. And then you have cost to the Fish and Wildlife mitigation programs based on the spill. And so as you increase spill, you are decreasing revenue to your Fish and Wildlife programs. So at what point do those all 3 collide? And that's your sweet spot.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great question. And we heard it was the Upper Columbia Salmon Recovery Board that noted that as revenue goes down from the Fish and Wildlife program, opportunity and funding for restoration, acquisition, fish passenger, all those things that are important for fish decrease. So what is the trade-off? Outside mitigation versus survival due to more spill.
So we'll add that to the list of
Yeah.
questions.
And
Other questions on spill?
Oh, after the webinar.
After the webinar.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can look at the discussion guides, before the webinar, you just familiarize yourself with some of the options so that you can hopefully inform yourself to So now we get to move to, oh, Bill, go ahead.
Well, let me tell you what my question is, and then we'll get it right now. I'd like to know whether there are alternative strategies to increase flow currently under discussion.
Alternatives.
And the reason I'm asking the question is I believe there are, and I believe that it is looking at both solar, wind, and hydropower timing measures that could result in increased flows at certain times and decreased flows at other times that offset but could assist in transportation of juveniles downriver in particular and increase survival.
Okay, so we've got
So just, there's
alternatives to increase flow and.
I would just like to know if there are additional alternatives actively being considered by BPA and to facilitate increased flow and increase survival rates on.
So the question is not a physical structural modification in terms of alterations. It's a pulsing or packaging using wind power when it's peaking and when it's.
So is that related at all to the issue with regard to revenue loss?
Yes, it is.
That's what I'm saying. That's your point,
It's
right?
balancing it in a manner that maintains revenue, but at the same time provides benefits to I just would like to have that in the mix when
No,
we're
that's a
thinking
really
about
good one.
what we may want to have as a recommendation.
And that's similar to what the last group said too. They talked about, what are alternative technologies to get us to where we need to go. And someone even brought up a specific thing about spilling smarter.
From the bottom rather than top of the water. All right, so the other thing is if there are, if you know of experts that you would like to speak on spill, you should
Let me know if you have someone in mind that is an expert on this fully dissolved gas and spill conversation so that I can invite them or at least present the list to the policy folks who would invite the speakers to the webinar.
Okay, so
Yeah,
now, make sure you get
Yeah,
there.
I got that on my mind.
Okay, so now if you look at page 3 of your discussion guide, this is an action about removing non-stable dams, locations that would most benefit this passage. And this is one, the other ones are just English questions. These are ones where we're actually trying to refine what recommendations you think should be included in the draft report. So, if you look, there's options from the working group here, and we can sort of tell you where the other group ended up. But the options were supporting funding for the currently agreed to and supported dam removal projects across the state, develop a list of dams that should be a priority list of dams for removal and dams that have been removed and what their benefits were. Halt the dam projects to address flooding on the Chehalis River and look at other options. And then D is a prioritized list again, and it sort of draws from the American Whitewater list. What the last group suggested is sort of merging those and sort of a couple parts. One of them was to support the 3 that are ready to go right now, which are the first 3 bullets under number D, the Middle Fork of the Nooksack, the Kolchak, and the Nelson Dam. Support those right away. Have WDFW develop a prioritized list of the remaining ones for consideration. Year 2, is that what it is?
Do the inventory assessment prioritization in year 1 if possible. It may take 2 years.
Yeah, try to get that for task force. And then on the Chehalis, they basically said not this year, and in the next year try and determine if this really is something that benefits orcas or if this battle that's been going on for a long time is trying to draw the orca task force in to take sides on that. Senator Rankin has understood.
I would like to know what the 6 or 7 recovery plans have as lists of dams. rather than start from scratch.
I think that's what they would draw is,
So could we ask the regional organizations to
Yeah.
come up with that list?
instead of WDFW.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm adding all of that on our
I mean, that's
list.
just a question I would have.
Yeah, I think that-
Those plans are out there, and I would hope that they had
So maybe develop a prioritized list based on the recovery plans, and maybe that's still WGFW is the who that does that, but they should draw.
It'll be me, yeah. yeah.
Okay, Steve.
That's the one I can't answer.
What the barrier removal?
Fish patch is very.
Fish patches, barrier removal board.
they're mostly looking at road barriers and culverts and.
Transportation related, but they have others, yeah.
So again, these three go now, so fund those and get, that's priority number one. Get a prioritized list and look at the other dams. And then hold off on doing anything on the Chehalis until year two, but get more information on its actual impact on orcas and see if there is a direct benefit to orcas from changing the Chehalis.
It might be nice to know on the Chehalis what the timeline is for the current SEPA process. I think it's a SEPA process. Is it NEPA or SEPA? I think it's SEPA. Because there's a process underway for that dam.
So get more information
Yeah.
again, yeah.
That's what
Kurt said,
Yeah,
yeah.
what are the benefits and impacts to Chinook from that process?
And learn more about it.
Yeah, the timeline for them making it, proposing a decision.
It'd be interesting to know the reasons for opposition, if there are any, to removing these listed names.
Yeah.
Because there are different reasons for it, like I know inland, there's a specific reason for it. I don't know about chambers or anything like that, but it would be nice to know that so you can understand if you can mitigate for that.
I think 2 of the dams are currently on the list that we have for funding now, soon. And those are the first 2, Middle Fork and the Filcha, through the Puget Sound funding that we manage. I don't know about the Nelson Dam, is that on coming in now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very simple for me to ask six
Yeah.
Salmon Recovery Regional Directors and ask them to list.
Middle Fork and Filter. Oh, we need to.
And I see Steve there, I know there's others out there.
So general agreement with sort of that framework.
There's another dam, I mean, maybe it's not a dam, it's part of the diversionary structure.
The electron?
Was that the electron, or there's a diversionary, it's an Army Corps of Engineers.
Which river do you want to? Is it in my map?
It's in that area.
Sounds like.
One of those rivers, Green, Longest.
Oh, Howard Hanson?
There's a diversion below the dam.
Oh, yeah.
That's a complete block, the
Yes,
salmon.
that's Tacoma Water Supply Diversion below Howard Hanson
Yeah.
Dam on the Green Lake.
Yes.
Perhaps that should be on the
We
list.
That would be
certainly
great.
toured it 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
yes, we should. I think there was strong support from what I heard.
Yes.
Whatever the name of that facility is, should be on
Yeah,
this
Tacoma
list.
Water Supply.
So that would be on the list.
That would be a different one. That was in that category of reintroduced fish into currently blocked areas. Where we wouldn't be removing those dams.
No, that's
Yeah.
what, no, that's Howard Hanson.
Yeah, this is a reintroduce against above currently blocked areas
Yes.
scenario.
And that has been in our salmon recovery plan since
Long
1990.
time.
And
So we did have at the last meeting with Natchez, the guys from Swoosh stood up.
They're here.
Whoosh.
No S.
And so I guess if some of these dams are gonna take 4 to 5 years or whatever, try to get on, it would be interesting to know if you could get around them in the interim.
With that technology.
Yeah, or with whatever technology, they just have to be there, whatever technology that there is out there.
so we should maybe get more information on whoosh and other technologies.
Interim measure.
Operate in the interim before all these dams are. Anything else on that? Okay, so the last one is on page 5 of your discussion guide. Expedite NEPA process for the Columbia River operation.
Yeah, and so the background on this is there's currently a NEPA process underway for the FCRPS operating systems. 14 dams that are being reviewed, Columbia Basin, Wyoming, clear to Montana, and all 14 that are being evaluated. We understand that the NEPA is supposed to wrap up in 2020 in the spring or 2021. Question is, do we want to request the governor to ask for expediting that particular process?
And so just to tell you what the other group did, is they started out with saying, these are all three low effort, potentially low effectiveness, but let's do them all, and then decided they're low effectiveness, let's not do any of them. And, on one hand, it would be easy to ask the governor to write a letter to do these things. So anyway, so I think it's a good question. So what do you guys think?
Trying to increase the speed of buyout.
Yes, and there's
Do all of these 14 have fish passage facilities at them?
No. Several, no, Chief Joe, Grand, Hungry Horse, maybe Hell's Canyon, no, Hell's Canyon Complex is not even, that's
so
I'd rather have the governor use it instance.
Yes.
Hydropower.
yeah, I think that was the,
NEPA's, there's statutory timelines in there, and I mean,
that's sort of what they thought it would be good to speed up that process, to get work is considered in that process, but the odds of that actually happening at this stage are low, so save
Does this relate to the judge's expiration of the ruling in 2018, the buyout?
No, I'm not the expert, so I know there's a relationship, but I don't know if NEPA is driven by the judge's ruling. I think the buyout expires sooner than that, but I think it's 2018, it's soon, yeah.
But the judge didn't require any.
I don't believe that's
The judge did
correct.
not
I think
require
it's-
that.
yeah.
But they're going ahead with one regardless. Right, okay.
So that would be a good question for me to add to the list, because I could not answer that. So
The
that-
relationship between the
Right, so,
buyout.
yeah.
So just so it's clear, for this one, it was keep it on the list, but it's like in the list of other things you could do if you had time, kind of.
Yeah, so the governor, if he was, up at midnight and felt like he could write this letter.
My concern would be if you expedited the NEPA process, you made it more vulnerable to challenge at the other end. So that would be my worry.
Yeah. All right, so this has been sort of looked backward or still on the list, but
I mean, I understand keeping on the list. If this is something that's really not possible, does having this on our list make us look less credible? I mean, if this is really not something that can happen,
I think it's something that could happen. I don't think that effectiveness is so low that it may not happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, they characterized it as it would be easy to do, to
Right.
pass letters to the governor, some letter, but it might not have much effectiveness, so should you even bother?
and I think the other group felt that asking that the NEPA process and the biological opinion look at the impacts of orcas is just sort of raising that issue into that conversation, and there could be some benefits to that, but again, they think that you have more powerful recommendations for your year one priorities.
orcas already are being considered.
Okay, so that's even
Yeah,
more.
there's cumulative impacts that go way beyond salmon.
So then the last thing in our time here, I have no idea what we're all ahead of schedule, is in your packets is a list of PRAY working group recommendations that had broad support. And there were other recommendations on hatcheries habitat, hatcheries habitat, or forage fish, and the other eight are missing names. Carvers, that received broad support in the survey, but also received a fair amount of either wanting information or opposition. Those are the tougher ones, and those are the ones we're going to queue up at the next task force meeting. But in the meantime, since these ones in your packet here had broad support, we're just proposing that we continue to work on them, refine them so that they're in actionable language, like who should do what, and sort of keep them on the list and moving forward. The goal is to give you a full list of all of the potential recommendations for all of the threat groups so that you can then figure out which ones of these should be the priority for year one and how they're spread among all the threats and is it comprehensive and does the package make sense. So what we're proposing for these is we keep them on the list of potential recommendations for now. It may be that some of these don't rise to the top for year one recommendations, but because there was broad support, we'll keep them on the list and move them forward unless you have any objections to that process.
So by definition, what broad support meant for those who don't have the packet is the task force was surveyed and they could answer from very definitely yes to very definitely don't support. And these are the ones that had 80% or more of the very definitely or yes support. So neutral, no support, definitely no, we're not included. So anything that had 80% or more of that, those two uppermost are on that list. Gives us a pretty strong commitment that we need to start working with staff, refining, making these actionable in language and specific in terms of tasks with, lead and responsibility and timeline and all those things that come with these specific actions. I found that was heartening to me to use Jock's word, whoever said it earlier, that there were so many that are. There's a lot on that list. Somebody else said, there's our list. But yeah, there's more to the story than what's on that list, clearly, but that was good to see.
I was impressed, or I guess not impressed, but I took to account Senator Ranker's comments about let's not give them 75 recommendations. I hope through this process we'll have, 10 to 15.
That's exactly right.
And then other things over time. So I just was taken by that.
And it may be what we discussed in the last group of maybe having here are our top 10 priorities, and then here are others that we think are also important, and maybe those carry over to year two or not. But really giving them a concrete list of about 10 that we really want to get done right.
And you might break them into funding decisions and policy decisions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Andy?
One thing I don't think that's come up here really at all in the ability is that when we're talking about protecting salmon, most of the time we're talking about protecting the listed species or threat species. There's not a pot of money that I know of for non-listed habitat restoration.
We do have some.
You do have some. So it would be, you look at if the call-wills are going to want to put fish above the blocked area, that's going to be a non-listed species. So there's not a lot of money there in the pot.
We don't have money. We
Right.
can't do the federal.
So there's these places where there's stocks that are going to be feeding Orca that don't have a lot of dollars to be used for habitat restoration, but if you did habitat restoration on those stocks, you might see an actual an exponential increase in output.
Right. So the comment here is most of the funding we talk about is for endangered species, ESA listed fish, mitigation obligation, ESA treaty trust obligation, international commerce, all those things we invest in restoring salmon. But there's a handful of stocks out there that Andy mentioned that are not listed, and that perhaps could provide a significant list, but there's not much funding available. The one that we toured last week was down in the Walla Walla Human Hill, where BPA is preparing to fund $500,000 spring Chinook production facility for all the reasons I just mentioned. Andy's talking about Upper Columbia, Summer Chinook. These are the big ones. These are humongous fish that he's talking about getting reintroduced above Chicho and Grand Coulee. That may be the mainstay of the southern resident killing well, but it disappeared for a bunch of reasons. So how do we get funding for those non-listed? Embedded in the spreadsheet behind this high-level summary is exactly that. Identify the importance of funding restoration for non-listed. It was a coast issue as well as a mid and upper.
We used to have a thing called, I forget what it was called, strongholds.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Strongholds.
Yes.
Strongholds.
Yeah.
Was another term of art. It wasn't as broad as just unlisted,
Yeah.
but it was those strong runs that we needed to make sure stayed strong and didn't dip into threatened or endangered.
We're doing a bunch of these with reintroducing spring chinook. Thinking about life history diversity.
Right, yeah.
The other group kind of concluded their discussion with some ideas of what the report might start looking like. And they wanted to be sure that there was a process to, kind of follow up on the recommendations and what's being implemented. So addressing that in the report, maybe coming up with a report card format for, gauging implementation and how things are going. And if we're having trouble making progress on some things, including in any kind of report, what the challenges have been. So why things aren't moving forward as fast as we had hoped. So that was some ideas they got around to about how to present all this. So if you have any other thoughts about that, you could write those down too.
Could make the Orca a metric, a performance metric.
See the numbers go up, I mean, that's easy.
Yeah, that's in the vision.
That's all. Performance metrics, adaptive management, evaluation, yeah.
I think one other thing for us to think about is there's so many of these recommendations that require geographic specificity. It might be interesting to think about if you're organizing a report, what things are statewide, or like maybe a lot of the contaminant stuff is statewide, and then what things are geographically specific. Should there be a Snake River region section and a Tucson section?
Okay.
How do we? It'll be a challenge to communicate both the high level stuff and the details.
Yeah.
So I think we should think about
Yeah,
it.
maybe state of the sound and state of the salmon and, yeah.
We have the live data that we stream into our state of the salmon.
Yeah, good idea, Laura. Well, I don't know what time it is and what time we're scheduled to wrap up here, but if folks have other ideas, we're in here.
Can we make a comment on this list?
Yes, please do.
Well, it's on the front page, one of the one pages, front and back. So, I understand and support D2, but I do not understand D1, which is include federal well consideration and Pacific Century negotiations to allow more Chinook to reach Washington. I get that. Timeline 0 to 3 years, immediate 0 to 3 years.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not right. Yeah.
There's no way we're going to restart the negotiations in 0 to 3 years.
Were they referring to the one that just concluded recently?
Well, that is, yeah, that's what is D2, the timeline is immediate.
Yeah, Phil, I think what they're saying is that the negotiations won't happen again.
I know I responded to this.
Okay.
I understand that, but I just don't, this is, D1 is meaningful.
Yeah, it's meaningless and misleading.
D2 is meaningful. We just sent a letter transmittal to the two governments, Office of Political Affairs in Canada and the State Department on Friday. The minister in Canada is being briefed today. We should have news releases out maybe tomorrow or the next day on the specifics. So all that stuff, and we're having a U.S. section meeting Thursday to put together the funding package. We'll make sure everybody knows what's in there. Certain connections to the settlement and program. So I get all that in D2 and D1.
Is there anything that would be helpful to you in the next negotiation to have in your report now? Or
We got to get through what we've made some fairly major changes in the way the previous structure. We need to get 5, 6, 7 years behind this, implementing and see how it all works.
with something
Andy?
Is there any way, like here we got on A, we got increased hatchery production at facilities. But is there any way within the hatchery committees or any of the other scientific bodies that they could just say, okay, here is the piece. Senator Ranker said it really fast. It's simple enough, but and So is there a way that some other entity could just say, here are the fastest, least expensive options that you could do, not taking into account what we've already done? But like circular tanks. I know that's something that probably would increase. I don't know how much it costs.
Well, I thought I knew what your question was, but you threw me off there. So Noah's written a memo that Peter Geiger authored that in response to, because I mean, when we were renegotiating the treaty, we had Southern Residence Federal front and center of our minds. And we thought that increasing hatchery production done right, impairing recovery, natural spawning population, blah, 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 would be a piece. And so there's been an analysis done, it's been coordinated with the state and the tribe, it's out there. And it should be, ready to use. I am positive we will have a significant funding piece coming out of the U.S. section for implementation of the treaty that will be specific for increasing hatchery production to benefit southern residents, Delaware. So all this stuff ought to come together between now and the October meeting, some of that information. So I'll be able to give you some more specifics along with my friends. For that, right? So I don't know if that.
No, it does, because I'm just wondering, guys wanted to know if there was a piece of information.
And there will be, and we're looking at stuff we can do quickly versus more long term. All that stuff was considered by the Bill of Fisheries evaluation and the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
I think maybe getting at what you're asking is, I think there's a first step that's with existing capacity, but also an infrastructure piece as well, that was with additional consideration of what is that infrastructure, what else?
Yeah, if you're going to increase output, I know 2 hatcheries, if they're going to increase output, it's going to cost a lot to do it.
So those are 2.
But, there might be some out there that, where you're changing tank.
Right.
Dimension or whatever.
And this was we put it through that filter, what do we have in terms of existing hatchery capacity without investment in additional infrastructure, kind of ready to go, can do it in a manner that's consistent with hatchery reform, natural spawning population. So that's one of the first filters that we're going through. So there's stuff like that, and then there's the longer term, what I'll call longer term increases that require some sort of infrastructure investment.
Will there be a list of hatcheries that come out of that?
There is currently one now that the hatchery committee, none of us are the co-chairs of the hatchery committee of opinion, and so she's been working on that list of hatcheries that currently exist, that are permitted, that are ready to go. And then there's that longer list of hatcheries where we'd like to have them and are compliant with ESA and don't compromise salmon recovery and feed southern residents killer whales. So you lay all these screens on there, and they're not everywhere, but there are opportunities out there, yeah.
Are those every hatchery, or are those only states?
That's been a question the work group talked about. I think the mission statement was just
That's broad.
It's broad.
Yeah,
U.S.
it's
Fish
broad.
and Wildlife Service.
U.S. Fish, yeah.
Tribal.
WFW, it's broad.
And I would say there probably is some additional discussions with state and tribes and the hatchery managers to work out a lot of those details, but a preliminary.
I don't think Hydropower hatcheries are included in that review.
They were not, at least not from what I saw. They were just state of Washington, one state of
But I
Washington.
mean, the hatchery program review is doing all the federal and state trials.
I
I
think-
don't think the private ones are included in that review.
I mean, there's work to be done between the county managers
Yes.
for sure. I'm not saying this is all signed off on. It's more of a feasibility. Where do we have the opportunities for in production that would benefit southern resident killer whales? So it's that kind of analysis. Obviously, we're interacting with tribes or treaty right, there's constitutions, all that stuff.
I think we've got everything we need. You guys got everything you need.
Yeah, you're going to be about 5 or 10 minutes ahead of the other group, because they're not as efficient. Just, yeah, take a break and if you're